What I mean is that this nightmare will never end. Every time I wake up, I'll be reminded that Elvira is never coming back. I can't doubt my ability, Finnegan. It's too risky. What's that supposed to mean? Devante, reconsider. Don't make me embarrass her in front of the whole town and in front of your children. You're gonna do as you're told. Whatever happens to my wife after you cross-examine her will be something she brought on herself. Right now, you've got to do whatever it takes to make Devante pay. If my diary helps with that, then you need to let it go. Benny, I love you so much, and you'll never forget me. I'm unforgettable. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to take you all back in time. Back to a time before streaming platforms, social media, and even smartphones. Looking back at it now, 2003 was a simple time. Back in 2003, there once lived a teenager, a young girl whose name was Elvira Russo. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, and an aunt. Elvira was loved. She had dreams and she was full of life. Unfortunately, in the summer of 2003, before she had the chance to turn 18, when her whole life was ahead of her, Elvira's life was brutally taken. For 2 decades, her family, loved ones, and even the world wondered who brutally took the life of this young, vibrant girl. In the beginning of the year, we found the monster who took Elvira Russo's promising life. That monster is in this courtroom, and his name is Devante Torres. It is up to us to make him pay for selfishly, senselessly cutting Elvira's life so short. There is no doubt that Elvira's passing was tragic and sudden. I know very well that she meant a lot to a lot of people. She deserves justice, but my client is not the one who should be punished for Elvira's tragic loss. And it was a tragedy, but in times of tragedy, we look for triumph. Convicting Devante Torres is not how Elvira will gain a triumphant end, and I will prove it to this court. You couldn't at least compliment me like 88 Grand complimented Elvira? Shut up and wait for compliments during the closing statements. I would like to bring Wanda Mitchell to the stand. You have nothing to worry about. Just tell the truth and everything will be all right. Mrs. Mitchell, can you explain your friendship with Elvira to the court? Elvira and I were friends since we were kids. I always had her back and she always had mine. The two of us were inseparable. Inseparable to the end. Bottom line is that you two were close. We were pretty much like sisters. And you two were close to the point where you would share secrets? That's correct. Does this also mean that you were aware of her sexual relationship with Mr. Torres? Yes. Can you tell the court how old Mr. Torres was at the time when he was involved with Elvira? He was 22, and we already established that Elvira was 17 when she lost her life. Now you say that Devante was 22. In Mr. Torres' own words, Elvira seduced him, which began their affair. Was that what Elvira told you? Not at all. Elvira explained to me that Devante was the one who seduced her. But she knew that Elvira was underage and that Devante was a grown man with a family of his own. Why did you stay silent? Because Elvira begged me not to tell anyone. What made you decide to finally speak up after all these years? It was the fact that I figured out that Devante was the one who took Elvira's life. When Ben came to the beachfront at Theodosius's palace talking about what he heard Elvira scream the night she lost her life, it all made sense. What do you remember about the night that Elvira lost her life, Mrs. Mitchell? I remember being at Theodosius's palace that night. I noticed Devante leaving the hotel wearing his green suit. At the moment, I thought he needed fresh air, so I didn't think anything of it. When I see him come back, before I headed out of the hotel, I noticed that he wasn't wearing his green suit anymore. It's summertime and it's Florida, so for all these years, I just assumed that he took off his suit because he felt hot. Now I realized that he got rid of his suit because it must have had Elvira's blood on it. Objection. This is speculation. No further questions. Mrs. Mitchell, can you tell the court if Elvira was in a relationship while she had an affair with Mr. Torres? She was. And she was dating Udell Mitchell. The reason why you're Mrs. Mitchell today since you married Mr. Udell Mitchell, correct? Correct. I would imagine that Mr. Mitchell wouldn't have been happy knowing that his girlfriend was unfaithful to him. Did Elvira feel guilty when she first slept with Mr. Torres and admit to Mr. Mitchell that she cheated, or was the affair a continuous affair? It was continuous. But Elvira felt guilty for cheating on Udell. Because of her guilt, she ended up telling Udell that she cheated. Did that matter to your husband though? Did Mr. Mitchell end up taking Elvira back? No. Were you happy with that? Objection. Your Honor, this serves no relevance to the case whatsoever. Your Honor, Mrs. Mitchell is on the stand and she is certain that she saw my client walk out of the hotel to brutally take Elvira Russo's life. I think the jury deserves to feel confident that Mrs. Mitchell is a confident witness. Overruled. Can you answer the question, Mrs. Mitchell? Were you happy that your husband didn't take your best friend back? No, I wasn't happy about it because I knew how much they loved one another. Yet Elvira cheated on Mr. Mitchell with my client. Is it fair to say that Elvira didn't appreciate your husband? You tell me. I'm asking you the question, Mrs. Mitchell. Objection! Your Honor, she's badgering the witness. Your Honor, it's a simple question. Overruled. Her actions show that she didn't appreciate Udell, but again, Devante seduced her. Did Elvira know that sleeping with Mr. Torres was wrong? Yes, just like I'm sure that Mr. Torres knew it was wrong to cheat on his wife with a teenage girl. We already established that Elvira knew it was wrong to sleep with Mr. Torres. Since she knew it was wrong, does that also mean she was constantly dishonest with Mr. Mitchell when they were together? Yes. And when Mr. Mitchell found out that his girlfriend cheated, did you also admit to him that you knew she was sleeping with Devante? No, I didn't. And now you're married to him and have a daughter of your own. It sounds like you're holding on to that secret for years. Worked in your favor, Mrs. Mitchell. Objection! Once again, Your Honor, she is badgering the witness. Sustained. Tread lightly, Miss Drake. My apologies. Mrs. Mitchell, according to your testimony, you held on to the fact that Elvira was involved with my client. According to your testimony, Elvira was a dishonest young woman. Am I wrong? No. Mrs. Mitchell, I don't doubt that Elvira told you that Devante seduced her. But since she had a habit of lying, wouldn't it be fair to say that she lied about that? Isn't it possible that she's the one who seduced my client? You wretched, evil woman! How dare you desecrate my daughter's name? How dare you stomp on my daughter's name to protect that monster? You should be ashamed of yourself. Order in this court. Clarice, let's just step out for a bit, okay? If Devante is going to pay for what he did to Elvira, then you need to calm down. Mr. Russo, can you explain to the court how you're connected to the victim? Elvira Russo was my late aunt. Where were you the night your aunt lost her life? I was at my family home, the exact place where Elvira lost her life. She was watching me like she regularly did while my family was at Theodosius's palace. I was asleep for a moment until I heard Elvira screaming. She just screamed out of nowhere. No, actually, I could hear her arguing with someone. I just wasn't sure exactly who it was that she was arguing with. Could you hear what the argument was about? I couldn't. All I remember is Elvira arguing with someone, but I could pick apart her saying, "I don't want you." The next thing I know, she's screaming to the top of her lungs. I get out of bed, run downstairs, and found her. Now I realize that she was screaming for her life. You say that you heard Elvira scream the words, "I don't want you." What makes you so sure that she yelled those words to my client? It's the only thing which makes sense. Elvira regretted hurting Udell and was still in love with him. Mr. Russo, how exactly did you find out that Devante was sleeping with Elvira, and how are you so certain that she was still in love with Udell Mitchell? I received confirmation from Wanda ever since I found out Elvira cheated on Udell Mitchell all of those years ago. Can you tell the court how Elvira's passing affected you? How about you tell them? Mr. Russo, please lose your attitude and cooperate with Miss Drake. Finding my aunt screwed me up. How? It put my head in a dark place. Like depression? You can say that. Would you also say that going into depression landed you to become an addict? Objection, Your Honor, the witness's personal struggles have no relevance to the case. Your Honor, the witness was at the scene of the crime, and I believe it would do the court a favor to ensure that the witness is in sound mind now and was in sound mind then. Overruled. Did you turn to alcohol and other substances to deal with your pain? Yes. What of it? Are you aware of what that could do to your body and your brain? Just because I made stupid choices doesn't make me a stupid person. Mr. Russo, I've already warned you once. Alcohol and other substances, when used excessively, can alter reality, can it? That's right. So, who's to say that your memory wasn't just altered? After all, you were 5. It was 20 years ago, and you started using substances and drinking alcohol excessively down the line. Maybe you didn't know what you were hearing. Objection, this is speculation. No further questions. Mrs. Torres, how long have you been married to the defendant? For about 22 years. Were you aware that he was unfaithful to you with Elvira, who was also underage? I didn't find out until the beginning of the year. Did you ever expect that your husband would ever cheat on you? Never. So is it fair to say that there was a side to your husband which you never knew about? Almost like you were married to someone with a facade? Objection. He's leading the witness. I'm only trying to get the court to understand the sort of person the defendant is, and there's no better person to get this information from than his spouse. Overruled. Would you say that you never really knew who you were married to? That's exactly what I would say. Now, Mrs. Torres, the night when Elvira lost her life, did you notice your husband there all night? No, I didn't. Devante never even said a word when he left the hotel. He just walked out and came back in as if he never left. No further questions. Mrs. Torres, has my client ever mistreated you throughout your marriage? I wouldn't consider being unfaithful as treating me right, but has he ever raised his voice at you? No. Has he ever called you out of your name? He hasn't. Has he ever threatened to harm you, or did he ever lay a hand on you? No, he never did. Mrs. Torres, it is public knowledge that Devante was unfaithful to you with Elvira Russo. How did that make you feel? I felt betrayed, knowing that my husband was unfaithful to me. All of those years hurt me, and I lost all trust in him. To the point where you believe that he could take someone's life? His lover's life? That's correct. Mrs. Torres, has my client ever accused you of taking someone's life? He hasn't. Have you always been faithful to him? Mrs. Torres, have you always been faithful to your husband? Objection! Your Honor, this question serves no relevance to the case. The court deserves to know whether Mrs. Torres wants to see justice done or if she is only bitter because of her husband's betrayal. Overruled. Mrs. Torres, did you cheat on your husband? Yes or no? Yes. With whom? Objection, Your Honor. Not only is this irrelevant, but she's badgering the witness. Once again, this court needs to know whether Mrs. Torres' intentions for taking the stand are pure. Figuring out the identity of the person she was with can help determine that. Overruled. Mrs. Torres, who were you unfaithful with? It was, I cheated on Devante it was Isidore Russo. The brother of Elvira Russo, correct? That is correct. What happened after you slept with Isidore Russo? Harley, please. Did you end up pregnant? Mrs. Torres, did Isidore Russo get you pregnant? Yes. What happened to the baby, Mrs. Torres?